Hi, this is James from Tabletop Gaming Guild, and today we're going to look at the 2 to 4 player game Cedars from Series Exodus, Episode 1, published by Sweet Games and Whiz Kids. This is going to be a game where you're going to be a representative of multiple different casts, and you're going to try to be the one who becomes the most prestigious for creating the arc that's going to be used to escape their planet and find new planets. Let's go ahead down to the table here, and I'll give you a general overview of how the game's played, and then we'll come back and I'll give you my final thoughts. Okay, so this is Cedars from Series Exodus rules. Now, when you start this, you're going to go over and try to get the most prestige points by the end of the game. Whoever has the most prestige points wins. This game takes over 4 turns, and each of them consisting of 5 main phases. You're going to have the preparation phase, the foundation phase, the negotiation phase, integration phase, and prestige phase. For the first turn of the game, you're going to skip the preparation phase. The preparation phase is basically going to resolve 2 different things. What it's going to do is some effects and cards in this game are going to have you turn them sideways to show that you used that effect during that round. If you did any of those, then you're going to need to turn those cards back. Now, just to briefly go over, there's 2 types of cards in this game. There's going to be character cards, which are going to have these symbol up right here, and then there's going to be unit cards, which are going to have this symbol right here. Cards in this game are going to be multi-purpose, but we're going to go over those in a second. But just know that throughout the game, you're actually trying to combine crew with a unit, and you can have up to 2 crew in 1 unit. And these cards are built so they can like slide in together, and you can see the crew ability with the unit. But we're going to go over that in a second. So in the preparation phase, like I said, you're going to turn any of those cards that you have upright, and then you're also going to determine turn order. You already did this in the setup of the game, so you don't need to do this in preparation phase, so that's why it's skipped. But what you're going to do is the player with the lowest amount of prestige points puts theirs in the first player slot, and then from reverse prestige order, all the other ones are going to go there. Now, if there's a tie, those tied players don't move their prestige or move their turn markers right here. They stay where they're at. So that's pretty much all you're really going to be doing during the preparation phase of the turn. Now we're going to go into the foundation phase. In the start of the foundation phase, the first player is going to hand out 4 of these arc cards to each player. After the first turn, players are actually allowed to keep 1 card, up to 1 card at the end of their turn. So at this point, if a player already has a card, they'll get their 4 cards, but they'll have to discard 1 of them before they continue. So keep that in mind. You can keep your card, but in this main phase here, this foundation phase, you can only have 4 cards at the end of it. Now, if you're playing in a 2-player game, you're only going to distribute 2 cards. So in a 2-player game, you only get 2, but any other player count, you're going to get 4. Now, there is a variant in this that I suggest using all the time after your first play, and that is when you draw your 4 cards. Now, if you kept one behind, you're going to keep it down in front of you and not do this, but you're allowed to draft these cards, which I think is really cool. So you can actually pick one of these cards, pass it to the next player, they'll pass it to you, and you'll pick one, and you keep going until you have your cards for that phase. I like that a lot, and I highly recommend it. But no, that's a variant on there. You don't actually have to do that. You can just do it. You keep what you get. All right, now we go into what's known as the negotiation phase. And in the negotiation phase, you're going to do some card setup. Now, there is a change for expert play for this that we are not going to go over, but just know that there is a different setup for that, or slightly different rules for that. What you're going to do is you're going to take the top 12 cards and place them in here. And technically what you're supposed to do, you're supposed to put them in order here. So, whoops, where's one? Okay, that is 1. 1, 2, 3. And you can see these little numbers down here tell you where they go. And you're going to place 12 cards out on the board. And this is going to make up the game board for this turn that you players are going to go through and try to acquire these cards using their negotiation chips, which we're going to show in a second. So now that these are all out, we're going to go now in turn order. So the yellow player would go first, and you're going to pick one of the 6 negotiation chips that you have, and you're going to place them out on the board. So I'm going to look at what I have all available here, and I'm going to say, okay, well, I want to place out this negotiation chip here, which you can actually lift this board up if you have problems picking it up, which is nice. I'll fix that in a second. Let's say I want to put that guy here. Okay. So now what happens when I place out my negotiation chip? I'm going to put out my influence cubes based on the placement of a negotiator chip. Now, as you see, so I put out the Theocrat negotiation chip, and you'll notice that these values here, so I'm going to show you this real quick. You notice that these start out with 1 and 1. So that means I'll put 1 here and 1 here for my influence counter. However, if the symbols match, so this symbol here matches this symbol, I get a bonus cube, and that will go here. Now, players are going to take turns placing out all of their negotiation chips throughout the board. And I'm going to probably set up here an example real quick, and we're going to go over what happens for the next portions here. Okay, now you're actually going to continue doing this until all the negotiation chips are placed out, but we're just going to do these couple here for the examples. Now, right before we actually resolve how these chips go out, players can activate the abilities on their cards. And we're going to go over what the different activation abilities that you can have on the card in a little bit, but just know at this point, before we do negotiations resolution, you can activate the abilities on your cards. And most of the time, you can only ever activate your abilities on the negotiation and integration phases of the game. But you can activate your abilities. Sometimes they will change things that occur before they do. Maybe add influence tokens, remove influence tokens, do all sorts of fun stuff. The negotiation resolution phase is pretty simple throughout the game. What you're going to do is the resolution of negotiator begins with all negotiator spots that are occupied. So anything that has stuff in here that has negotiation on them that are occupied, they're going to go fire off first. And they are resolved one by one, going in ascending orders numbered on the negotiation chambers. So you can have 1, 2, 3, 4, it goes around. So the first one will be resolved, and simply what you're going to basically do for these ones is you're going to take a look. And this is the first one. You're going to say, who has the most influence cubes on this location? Now, in this case, there's a tie. So no one does. So this card will become discarded. And I know in a normal example, we go to this one next, but we're just going to show an example over here. So when this one gets resolved, the red player has more influence cubes than the yellow player, so they'll get this card and you'll be able to put it in their hand. When you're actually able to claim a card like this, you're going to have to return one of your negotiation chips to your board. If you don't have a negotiation chip and you won the card, you still get the card. But if you can, you have to return that chip to your board. Once all the cards have been won and you've completed all these cards on the board, each player can upgrade one of their negotiators remaining on the board. So if there's any negotiators remaining on the board, meaning you didn't win any cards, you can upgrade that negotiator. Okay, so upgrading your negotiators, basically what you're going to do is the ones remaining on the board, so they didn't get picked up. You're going to take your board here, and you're going to upgrade any the left or the right of the negotiator that's remaining on the board. Now, you can only up these by 1, and the max they can go is 3. So I can pick the left or the right, and let's say I put that in as 2. So this one now can put 2 negotiation chips on the left and 1 on the right, and that's always how that works. And you're going to do that for all the tokens that are remaining on the board. You're going to be able to upgrade your influence for the future rounds, or turns in this case. All right, now we get into phase 4, which is the integration phase. And there's a couple different things you can do on your turn. Following in turn order, each player can perform the following in the integration phase. On their turn, they can play 1 or more of the following actions as many times as they wish. So you're basically going to resolve everything you want to do then. Keeping in mind and remembering at the end of the round, you can only have up to 1 card left over. So you want to pay attention to that. You can recycle a card. You can integrate a card into your arc. You can activate a technical cast ability, or you can move one crew from one unit to another. Action has to be completed before you do the next action. If you recycle a card, when you're looking at these cards, the recycle value of a card, let's actually go over the anatomy of these cards real quick, just again. So the anatomy of these cards is going to be a couple different things that you're going to notice on here. One is this is your recycle cost. So if you recycle this card, meaning you discard it, you're going to get that many gems. That is what you're going to get for that. That's your recycling points. And you can use these to then do other stuff. And one of the things you can do is when you place these cards down, you have to pay the cost here on the right. And this is how much it costs. This also here, this number here, is how many prestige points you get for playing this card. Couple other values that are on here that are important is going to be the type. Now there's 2 different types in this deck. There's going to be unit, which denotes this symbol. It also says unit right there. And then there's characters. So that's going to be symbol, and that's going to say, well, this is crew, sorry. And that's going to be your crew. We're going to go over what this means here in a second. But those are the big things we're going to look at first, and then you also have its ability. And we're going to go over those in a little bit because there's different types of activations that you're going to have on these cards. But that's the 2 things we're going to pay attention to for right now. One was that recycling cost, which is one of the actions you can do, discard a card for recycling. The next thing is you can integrate a card into your arc. When you integrate a card into your arc, again, you're going to look at right here, and that's how much it costs. You're trying to pair these up. So you're trying to pair up a unit with a person, a crew, because they have, in order for them to do stuff, they need to be together, or at least meaningful stuff. You're going to, then you can pick 2 different other actions, but you're going to basically continue this until you only have 1 card or less, is your goal. You can also activate a technical or cast ability. Now we're going to go more into detail on abilities in a second, but again, that's going to be this portion of the card right here. In this case, this one says that you have to tap this card or turn it to the side, and you have to spend that resource in order to do it. And then this, in the Wings of Whispers, you may move up to 2 cubes of the same player to other negotiation zones. So this is an example that you would actually do when you're placing out your negotiation tokens. But like I said, you have in your integration phase, you can also use these abilities if they apply. And the last one's pretty simple. So if I have 2 of these units out, I can move 1 crew to another. And we're going to go over a little bit more what's going to happen next. But before I do that, I do want to not forget to mention that you can also pick up these guys if you want to, using the abilities that are on these cards. So don't forget, I wanted to mention that a lot of these cards will have ability where you can get the extra crew members over here and put them in. So don't forget that players can pull from those crews in here. Otherwise, you can't normally get them from here. Once everyone has completed this to their satisfaction, fired off their abilities, got their workers, done all their fun stuff, did their attacks, which is a lot of attacks in this game, then we actually get into the prestige phase of the turn, and that's going to be the final portion. On here, the most important part of this part is going to be the arc reorder. You can actually, because you're going to lose people in this game and lose stuff, You can then, before we do any of the prestige counting, you can move around all of your crews and units the way that you see fit in order to ensure that you're going to get the most influence points during this phase. So at the end of this phase here, what we're going to do is during turn order, each player is going to count the prestige points granted by each of the prestige abilities, which we'll go over in a little bit, of all the cards they control, and move their score marker up accordingly. Units that are not hosting a crew do not activate their prestige abilities. So they actually have to have a crew in there to be able to activate their prestige abilities. Crews that are still vacant also do not activate their prestige abilities. In addition, vacant crews are ignored by other cards. Now, one thing to remember about a vacant crew, so at the end of the turn, if you have anything vacant, you have to flip it over. You can then do things with these on the next round, but if you don't, and these cards don't get paired up and still remain vacant, they're actually discarded and lost. So that is important to keep in mind. So if you end up having vacant crews because they got separated from the cruiser units and they got separated, it's important to remember that you will probably want to utilize them the next round. It's also important to note that if you get any mutagen counters, which we'll go over again, or jailer tokens, on a vacant crew, then they're not discarded. Just flip the card over and put them on top of that card. If you reactivate that card for any reason, you still get to keep those. We're going to go over some card abilities, but in general, that's it. That's going to be your points from the game, and whoever has the most prestige points is going to win at the end of the game. Now, a couple things to keep in mind throughout the game is going to be two main abilities. And these abilities are going to be the jailer ability, which you're going to get from these jailer tokens. And if we run out of jailer tokens and your card has a jailer ability, they don't get the ability. And then we also have these mutagen counters. Now, the jailer ability is pretty cool because what it basically does, it gives you the ability to place a jailer token onto a card of your choice. And again, if there's no more jailer tokens, you don't get the ability. If you spend this to place it on a card, you're also going to need to spend one resource, which is those gems over there, to be able to do it. If you capture or jail a card, a couple different things happen. You're going to start any mutagen or jailer tokens on it, and they become a prisoner. So once they're done, you take that card and you place it over in your area. Now, you can also bring a card out of jail by spending one jailer token and one resource and pick a crew from your own jail and place it into your hand. So you can jail an opponent's card, place it over to your area, and then on a future action, you can spend another jailer token and another resource, these gems, and get that card into your hand to be able to use it. So you can basically steal cards from other players. Takes a couple actions to do it, but it's still really good. The other thing we're going to talk about real quick is going to be these mutagen counters. On your turn, basically, what you're going to be able to do is you're going to be able to take one of your negotiation or on either a negotiation or integration phase. You're going to flip one of these tokens over to the mutant side, which is the mutagen side, and place it onto any crew in play. That crew is now considered a mutant in addition to its other abilities, so you can do this on opponents or yourself. Now, keep in mind that if you run out of mutagen tokens, you don't get one. So if a card comes in with that ability, you don't get it, just like the jailer tokens. And also, if a card becomes jailed, it also loses the mutagen counter. Things throughout the game will actually interact with things that are mutants. So there's a lot of beneficial things that can happen by making crew members mutants. Now, I did mention these extra crew members over here. Now, the way you're going to get those is you're going to have different cards that come out and play, and they're actually going to have the symbol on that says recruit. So they're going to say recruit specific types, and you'll get them. That's basically how that works. There's going to be mainly 4 different types of abilities throughout the game, too, and we're going to show you those 2 now. All right, so we're going to go and see some of these abilities. One of them is going to be the integration ability, and what's going to happen is this card right here, when you have integration ability on the top with that symbol, whenever you play this, whatever it says here just immediately occurs. So this is just going to be a one-time effect that will occur as soon as you play the card. This one here's symbol here, see it better, is for a basic like triggered effect. So for this one here, if you sacrifice a novice, you get to draw a priest. That's basically what that does. Every time you can sacrifice a novice, you'll get to draw a priest. Now each of them are different, but that's just what that symbol on top is going to tell you that you can do it anytime. This one here, you're going to have to turn this card to the side to activate it, so once per turn. And you also pay your resource, which is those gems, and then you get the ability down here. You will have to sacrifice a convert and draw a card. Now there's a couple. Now we just showed you the sacrifice one, which was the other one. It shows you what must be sacrificed, and then you get the ability down below. And you can do that multiple times depending on the card, whether it makes you, if it makes you tap the card, you can't do it multiple times. But if it's just one of those, one with that single resource icon on it, that means you can do it any time. The other thing is you're going to be having prestige abilities, and what prestige abilities are going to do is they are going to give you points for 4 different groupings. Let's get those real quick. Okay, so you're going to have affinity cards. So with affinity cards, basically what they're going to do, so we're going to show you different types. You're going to have affinity up on here. So this one says you're going to get, for each of prisoners, you're going to get 1 prestige point each. This one here, majority, if you have the most, you'll get this many points. That's basically what that means for that too. So those are 2 of the different abilities for prestige abilities you can get. There's also safe and hospital. So like this one here, hospital, says a little hospital symbol on there. What this means is during the prestige phase, you're going to gain 2 prestige points for each mutant primary crew hosted in your hospital arc. So whoever's in here and is a mutant, you'll actually get 2 additional prestige points. Now, the last one is going to be safe. So you're going to see it has this keyword safe on here. During your turn, during the negotiation or integration phase, you can transfer resources, which are those little gemstones, from your supply onto the safes. And you can spend these however you want, but at the end of the prestige round, you're going to gain 1 point for each of the resources, those little gemstones, on each of your units with the safe ability. So these will give you points, but they're a little dangerous because if an opponent destroys this card, you lose all those resources too. So there's a little bit of a risk with those guys. And that is all the rules from Cedars from Series Exodus. That should give you a general idea of how to play the game. And if you have any questions, the rule book is pretty detailed and has a glossary in the back. So let's go ahead back up to the table here and I'll give you my final thoughts on this game. Okay, I really like Cedars from Series. This is a really, really fun game of cutthroat negotiations. Now, one thing I tell people when we play the game is you have to remember that you're going for these prestige points. You are going to need to pay attention to what other players do, and you're going to attack them, and they're going to attack you. You're going to lose the units that you put out. You're going to lose, in this case, units are rooms. You're going to lose the crew that you have. They're going to disrupt what you're going to do. You're not going to be able to keep the things that you build through all 4 turns of the game. They're not permanent. You are backstabbing each other every step of the way, and it's super important what the turn orders are going to be every round. So it's another strategy in the game to determine whether you want to just lag behind a little bit so that you can be the first one to be able to put out those negotiator tokens the next round. Because it is very important what cards you pick up. You can do a lot of synergy in this game. You can do a lot of different things. You can will also need to pay attention to what your opponent's trying to synergize with and break them up a little bit too. So you have to be liking some game that has high player interactivity. This game has a lot of player interactivity, which I like. I like going through and actively paying attention to other players' turns, actively paying attention to what they're doing, having fun interacting with destroying their units or their crew or disrupting them in other ways, affecting their negotiation, where they influence cubes they put out, all that fun stuff. If that sounds like something that's interesting for you, I would highly recommend checking out Cedars from Sereis. It does that very, very well. And with the cards going out randomly on the Whispers board, each game is dramatically different. So there's a high number of or a high amount of replayability for this game. So that's my thoughts on Cedars from Sereis Exodus. Great game. Remember, there's going to be cutthroat and it's going to be high player interaction. So if that's good for you, this is a great game. Thank you for watching.